Hey guys, what's up? Chris here for BGN.com. Today I'm going to talk about a subject that's been around for a while. I've read some things on it, and the idea is, are IPAs ruining craft beer? Now, I would make the argument, I don't think they're ruining craft beer by any stretch of the imagination. I think, if anything, IPAs are actually keeping the craft beer world kind of stagnant. There's not a lot of room for growth or development of new styles, if you will, because people feel like they have to brew IPAs. So what is the problem with IPAs? Well, they're very expensive to brew. They're hard to brew a really good one, and the shelf life is pretty terrible. So from a brewing perspective, they're actually one of the worst things to brew. Hops are incredibly, they're very limited, and that's another kind of limiting factor on why IPAs may be ruining craft beer, is that there's going to be a hop shortage real soon. So these small upstarts, small breweries that are popping up regionally here and there, they all got to have an IPA. They all have to have a double IPA. So with that, the hop demand is going to keep increasing, as well as so as the number of craft breweries open, number of hops required is going to go up, and the hop farms they're trying to keep up with it, but it's not a viable, it's a very finite resource, I guess I should say. So they're very expensive. So what happens when you need these hops? If you're small, you basically have to contract the hops out at the beginning of a year. So you need to know kind of what hops you're going to want to be using. So everybody wants the Galaxy, everybody wants the Mosaic, the Citra. So those hops are more in demand, more expensive. So a lot of times breweries are going to have to go on like a third party market system kind of thing, where they're probably going to pay 2 to 3 times the amount of hops for the hops that they would have paid if they'd contracted them at the beginning of the year, which is hard because a lot of the bigger breweries already contracted those hops. So it's a vicious cycle for breweries and IPAs. So with that said, you walk into a bar, you walk into a bottle shop, and you're just starting to see more and more and more in IPAs. So that's basically limiting what breweries can put out as far as styles. Maybe there's styles that breweries won't even bother to brew because they have to keep their IPA on draft or on the shelf, and it just takes up too much time and resources. So there are going to be styles that are going to fall to the wayside that potentially maybe people could really get into, the next IPA, but we would never know because there's so many IPAs that are being brewed and just flooding the market. Now, don't get me wrong, I love IPAs. I love double IPAs. So I feel like this is kind of a backhanded conversation I'm having. And don't get me wrong, so I'm part of the problem, obviously. But with that said, I think that in order to remain relevant, a brewery, a new startup brewery, has to brew an IPA, a double IPA. It's the most popular style in the world right now. It's what gets the butts in the seats, so to speak, at the brewery. So you can't blame them for brewing them. So really, what is going to be the deciding factor? Like, how do we change this? Is it ever going to change? Well, I think the big thing that's going to happen is the hop shortages. There's going to be hop shortages. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The price of hops is just going to start increasing, and it's going to just put it out of the reach of many small craft brewers, especially when you're competing against some of the larger craft breweries, like Lagunitas, Stone, all those guys who have more clout, I would say, to get access to hops than some of the smaller ones. So I think that's going to be the limiting factor on whether or not we see a decline in IPAs or hoppy beers in general. It'll remain to be seen. I would say probably 5 to 10 years out would be a kind of a better picture of where we are. I can't imagine they're going to go anywhere, but I just think that's going to be the big limiting factor is, the hops, the amount of hops we can get, hop shortages, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So my thought was, well, what if craft breweries just stop brewing IPAs? And I don't think that will ever happen. I don't think that's a solution because, again, you have to brew an IPA to remain relevant. And I've talked to a couple people about that, and we've all kind of come to that same conclusion that as long as IPAs are the most popular style in the world right now, you're going to have to brew an IPA. It's kind of a necessary evil. So it's kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy of IPAs, quote, ruining craft beer, kind of taking over craft beer. But they have to, because you have to remain relevant, so you have to brew them, therefore taking over the, the rest of craft beer, keeping them on draft, keeping them in bottle shops, etc. So I think that's kind of where I'm at. I don't think they're ruining craft beer by any stretch of the imagination. Again, IPAs are a lot of people's gateway beers, hoppy pale ales, etc. So I think for that, they're not ruining craft beer, but I think they're keeping craft beer stagnant, for lack of a better word. I think the amount of innovation and new styles that we're seeing would be increased if brewers didn't feel like they were obligated to brew an IPA or double IPA, like they basically are right now. It's a necessity, and you can't blame them for that. So, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section below. I know this is a pretty broad topic, but I thought it was worth just talking about. So I wanted to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section below. Remember, folks, life's too short. Drink amazing beers. Cheers.